What's up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Twins Latest. I'm Sam Calder. Hope you're all doing well. We've got a busy episode, but it's going to be a good one, so you're going to want to stick around. And with that, let's jump right into it. We're going to start in free agency, and who are some names that I think could really help the Twins in 2026, as well as potentially beyond, that are still unsigned. It's important to keep in mind the financial situation of the Twins, as well as their current roster construction. They probably don't need another infielder after trading for a couple utility guys in Tristan Gray and Eric Wagaman earlier this month, as well as having guys on the bench who are plenty capable of filling in, guys like Edward Julian, Cody Clemens, etc. We talked yesterday about a potential starting pitcher trade, as well as some added help to the bullpen. So I'm going to focus on the pitching staff as far as these names go. The first name that catches my eye, who is still in free agency, is 41-year-old starting pitcher Max Scherzer. And I did just read a report that Scherzer himself said he'd have no problem waiting until past opening day to sign with the team. I don't know that we've ever seen a player do that before, but then again, I can't confidently say where Max Scherzer's demand is right now. He is one of the best pitchers of this generation. He's a three-time Cy Young Award winner. He was just the 10th pitcher to ever win that three times. He's also an 8-time All-Star and a 4-time World Series champion. So he knows what it takes to get to October, as well as what it takes to win in October. He won't be the same guy that we saw in the mid-2010s, obviously, but he's still someone that can be a mentor and leader in what is a pretty young pitching staff overall. Last year, he had a 5.19 ERA across 85 innings with the Toronto Blue Jays, and the biggest area of regression we've seen in his game comes from getting hit around a little bit more. Scherzer's expected batting average allowed last year, according to StatCast, was the highest of his career at 245. He gave up the most home runs per 9 innings pitched with 2 flat, and he gave up in total 19 home runs in those 85 innings. His command of the strike zone is not a concern. It's just the amount of contact given up, as well as obviously turning 42 this season. I think he could still be, like I said, a good mentor to some of the younger guys in that pitching staff. And assuming you could get him for not a whole lot of money, I think Scherzer would make a really nice addition as a 6th starter or even a bullpen role, but you've got to assume that he would need to sign on to that. Another guy that I like, who is also on the older side, is left-handed reliever Justin Wilson. Since his MLB debut in 2012, Wilson has played for 8 different teams. That number would be 9, of course, if the Twins were to sign him. He has a 3.59 career ERA across 562 innings pitched, 618 strikeouts to 243 walks. He really struggled with walks earlier in his career, but he's shown more command as he's gotten older. Like Scherzer, Wilson has gotten hit around a little more the last couple of years. His expected batting average allowed in 2025 was 236, so slightly better from Scherzer's 245, but not a whole lot. I do expect that number to come down a bit this year. He's got a really nice 4-pitch mix with his 4-seam sinker and slider, all being above league average in terms of movement. And Wilson was still good last year with Boston. He had a 3.35 ERA across 48 and a third innings pitched. So kind of like Scherzer, if you can get him for a couple million, I'd be very happy to add another bullpen piece. And then to stay with the older pitcher theme, one other name that I think would make a good addition is starting pitcher Chris Bassitt. Bassitt has thrown nearly 1,300 innings in his MLB career. He spent time with 4 MLB teams, including the Twins division rival, Chicago White Sox, where he started his career. He's been extremely consistent and durable throughout his entire MLB tenure. From 2019 to 2025, he's had an ERA no lower than 4.16 every single season. And from 2021 to 2025, he's thrown at least 157 innings each year, including over 200 in 2023. He's not going to be a 200 strikeout guy in a season, but he's always been good at limiting hard contact. As a 36-year-old last year, he was still in the 80th percentile of all pitchers in terms of hard hit percentage allowed. Bassitt would probably cost a little bit more than the other two, but I think he's also far more straightforward in terms of knowing what you're going to get. So those are a few names that I could see the Twins bringing in to kind of bolster the pitching staff. But it's also possible with how many talented arms there are in the minors that they just opt to not go after anybody and keep that money. So with that, I want to take a look at some young minor league pitchers who could/will see MLB action in 2026. I've been talking for the last week now about how much depth there is in the Twins starting rotation. I think it's easily the strongest part of the Twins roster. And because of that, I could see some starters being moved to the bullpen in order to improve the late game pitching and or just make some room for other guys in the starting rotation. So I've got a few names that I feel very confident will get some MLB action under their belt over the course of the year. And before I start, I should note I'm not going to count David Festa. He's projected to start in AAA according to Roster Resource, but he's thrown over 100 MLB innings at this point, so it seems pretty inevitable that he'll be up at some point. The name I'll bring up first is Mick Abel. Abel was acquired last summer in the Yohan Duran trade. He and Eduardo Tate, whose name I've brought up a couple times, both came over in that deal. Abel made his 2025 MLB debut with the Phillies before being traded. In 25 innings with them, he had a 5.04 ERA with 21 strikeouts to 9 walks. And then after being traded to Minnesota, he threw 14 innings in the majors. It did not go well, though. He finished those 14 innings with an 8.36 ERA, along with 18 strikeouts to 7 walks. The walk issues weren't awful, but it was 3.7 walks per 9, which you typically like to see a little bit lower. He was outstanding at AAA, though. He had a 1.85 ERA in 24 and a third innings with the St. Paul Saints and had a 2.39 ERA over 74 innings with the Phillies AAA team. He's still only 24, so he's definitely still growing as a player. I think if he can just get some more swing and miss, because he gave up over 1 hit per inning on average in the majors last year as well. I think if he can clean that up, he can have an impact for the Twins in 2026. The next name I'll mention is Andrew Morris. Morris was the Twins' 4th-round pick in 2022. Like Mick Abel, Morris will be 24 this season. He made it to AAA in 2024 and then spent the whole season in 2025 at AAA. He finished with a 4.09 ERA and 89 strikeouts to 28 walks. I do think he got a little unlucky last year. There's a metric called BABIP, which stands for batting average on balls in play. It removes strikeouts and only factors in your batting average allowed on balls put in play. Morris's BABIP allowed last year was 327, which for a guy who doesn't give up a lot of hard contact is likely not going to happen again. So Morris will start in AAA again, most likely in 2026. But I think it's very likely that he does make his MLB debut at some point this season. And then the third and final name I want to bring up is Connor Prelip. I talked about him a little bit last weekend when we were talking about the Twins bullpen. I think it's more likely we see him in a relief role than a starter. Prelip was a 2nd-round pick by the Twins in 2022, but he fell in the draft due to some arm injuries, and unfortunately those really haven't gone away. He had Tommy John in 2021, which is why he ultimately fell in the draft, and then had it again in 2023. He was healthy in 2025. He threw 82 and 2/3 innings across AA and AAA, but he had a 1.51 whip in those 82 and 2/3 innings. And as I've said, you typically want to see that around 1.2. So 1.5 is pretty high, but I think with a healthy offseason, he'll get that number down next year. But I do still think with his injury history, his future is in the bullpen versus in the starting rotation. He made 23 starts last year, but only threw 5+ innings twice. Now, for what it's worth, I mean, those were also his last 2 starts of the year. But I think with how much other young pitching talent is in the Twins system, mixed with Prelip's health history, in my opinion, it's best for both sides if Prelip just works out of the bullpen. But this is also the type of guy who could be a closer going forward if he's indeed moved to that relief role. But those are a few young arms I expect to see in the majors in 2026. Now let's shift gears a little bit here. We talked about him in Friday's player preview, but I want to circle back to Royce Lewis. We've seen him struggle with health and production in the last 2 seasons. Is it fair to say that 2026 is a make or break year for him? And I really want to give him the benefit of the doubt because of his health struggles, but to some extent, this has to be a make or break year for him. He has over 1,000 career plate appearances. He'll be turning 27 in June. He just played in 106 games last year, which is comfortably the most of any season in his career. And he had his worst season. He had an on-base percentage of under 300, as he did in 2024 as well. He had a batting average of just 237. His quality of contact metrics were also the worst of his career. But as I mentioned in his player preview, it seems like he got back to full health, or at the very least, much closer to full health at the end of the year. He stole 9 bases in the last month of the season. That is more stolen bases in a month than he had from 2022 to 2024 combined. We saw the power come back a little bit as well late in 2025. So there are certainly reasons to be optimistic about Royce Lewis entering 2026. We just need that hamstring to hold up. But I do have to say, I think it's absolutely fair to point out that this is a make or break season for him, just with the expectations of him being so high for the past few years and looking great, and then just really kind of falling off a cliff over the past couple. But health permitting, I do think we are in for a good season out of Royce Lewis. And then, as always, to wrap up the episode, we've got another player preview. This is the 5th of the offseason. Today, we are doing a deep dive into the Twins' projected starting first baseman, Josh Bell. And a lot of you probably had the same reaction as me when the Twins signed Josh Bell earlier this offseason. And by that, I mean you probably didn't really care. But he had a decent year last year. He hit .237 with 22 home runs for the Nationals. And looking at his expected stats on StatCast, he hit the ball a lot better than the surface level numbers would indicate. He hit the ball really hard and put it in play. His hard hit percentage last year was in the 73rd percentile of all hitters. I mentioned his .237 batting average. His expected batting average was .256, which would have actually been the highest expected batting average of any Twins player last year. His xWOBA was in the 87th percentile of all hitters, which, just to reiterate what that means, xWOBA is expected weighted on base average, which basically takes into account every ball put in play and measures the quality of contact for each and differentiates it from the actual result of every ball put in play. Bell's WOBA, which is his actual weighted on base average, was 324. His expected WOBA was 359, which is a massive discrepancy and indicates that Bell probably got quite a bit unlucky last year. Another nice thing about Bell is that he's a switch hitter. Last year he was far better against left-handed pitching, but historically he's been pretty solid against both, meaning he will likely be an everyday player in 2026, regardless of the other team's starting pitcher. It is very likely that he gets a fair amount of starts as the Twins' DH, as well as at first base. Victor Caratini can play some first base and is a better defender than Bell, so my guess is those two will kind of alternate a lot with who's at first, who's at DH. But there will also be days where Caratini is catching, meaning that Bell will have to be at first base and someone else is filling in at DH, presumably Byron Buxton. But I'm a fan of the Josh Bell signing, and I think he'll fit in nicely with the Twins this year. He's projected to hit third in the batting order, right behind Luke Keeschall and right in front of Matt Wallner. So clearly Minnesota has faith in him to be one of the better hitters on this team, and I bet he will be, because I'm very optimistic for his outlook on 2026. But that's all I've got for today's episode. If you guys enjoyed this episode of Twins Latest, please do me a favor and subscribe and give the video a like. If you've got anything Twins related that you want me to touch on in a future episode, let me know in the comments. But until next time, I'm Sam Calder, and I'm out.